Hey everyone, Kevin here from Skywatcher, and welcome to another episode of the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we go over pretty much anything we feel like doing because it's our webcast. But we go over all things astronomy, what's up in the nighttime sky, helpful tips and tricks on observing with your equipment, imaging, or having special guests on like we're doing today. So if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. It keeps us keep you up to date on all the new episodes and content that we have coming out. And if we release anything else, you'll be the first ones to know on that. So, like I said, we do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, and we go over anything we feel like, really. And my name is Kevin Legore. I'm the product specialist for Skywatcher here in North America. Now, today's a special episode. Every Friday, every last Friday of every month, we have a special guest speaker coming on. And this week we have our really good friend Stephen Ramsden from the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project and Sunlit Earth. And if you haven't heard of him, shame on you. And if you have heard of him, which I'm sure you've heard of him, we're happy to have him on here today. So I'm going to drag Stephen in here real quick. If you have any questions, just try to save them to the end. We'll try to get to that last 15 minutes. We'll do a Q&A for Stephen there. But let me bring Stephen in real quick. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Hey, everybody. It's great to be here, Kevin. Hold on a minute. I got a call. Hold on. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, beam me up, Scott. Yeah, hang on a minute. Is Jeff Simon on the show yet? Because
Jeff's watching.
Okay, because it's for him. They want to know if his port stabilizers need to be reset or if his what's the word? His EPS grid is functioning. Oh, wait a minute. There's also a Tribble here that would like to speak to Jeff. Okay, there we go. And live long and prosper, everyone. Remember, infinite diversity and infinite combination is the way to go. How's it going, Kevin?
Good. It's never a dull time talking to you. I know you've always got gizmos and gadgets and all kinds of fun stuff floating around.
Don't make me get out my bird head. That one's pretty scary. We're saving that for later.
So, now that all of you are fully aware of how Stephen operates, usually larger than life, I ask the same question to everybody who's on. How'd you get started in astronomy? Because we all have this, weird path that's taken us into this world. So.
Yeah, and I'm no exception. And I want to say seriously, thank you so much to Skywatcher USA, along with Celestron and Mead and Rainbow Symphony for making this program what it is and allowing us to do the great things we've done. I'm very grateful to all you guys. And Kevin, I've watched you from sulky teenager all the way through getting married, having your first kid, having your second kid, becoming a big name in the industry. And I'm just so proud of you, man. I can't stand it. So you are the future of outreach. And I feel like, it's my privilege to talk to you on the show.
Well, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, when I was a little kid, I was a nerd, man. I was chubby, and I was the guy that wore dress socks in gym class, and my dad's button-down shirts and stuff. So they called me professor in school, and I was kind of made fun of and stuff. And it turned out that was really a great thing for me. I didn't like it much at the time, but I was the smart kid that everybody cheated off of, and when I was in high school, we didn't have middle school back in those days. This is, back in the 16th century, basically. I'm not that old, but it was a long time ago. We had a chemistry teacher at my school who took me aside and said, you're a big guy and they're probably going to want you to play football and everything, and you do whatever you want to do in life, but I know that you have an aptitude for this science. And I want you to really give this chemistry class, a chance and see if you like it. And he gave me some labs to do and taught us how to make nylon from a stick that you dipped into these two chemicals, triaminic amino acid, I believe, and tetrahydrochloride or something. So I pulled out the string of nylon and I was like, man, that is so cool. So at that point, I said, this is cool stuff. This is what I'm good at, and this is what I like. And I took it from there and ended up writing an essay in this guy's physics class. Now you got to remember, this is Southwest Atlanta, the ghetto, a place called Ben Hill. My parents were both military, so we lived on near an army base. So we were in the worst part of town, and nobody really had access to super high end stuff. There was no such thing as a gifted program in my school. But I took the reins and went with it and wrote this essay for a National Science Foundation competition in the 10th grade, and I won, believe it or not. So I was given this opportunity to go to college, my first quarter of college at Georgia Southern, which is another podunk school out in the middle of nowhere. And the guest instructor for this class was none other than Carl Sagan. So Professor Carl Sagan, this is 1981, the same year that Cosmos was released on public television. It was the first show of its kind in the United States. No one had ever seen anything like it. Sagan released it on public TV, no commercials, no intent of making a fortune. His only intent was to get it distributed as much as possible. So here I am in Georgia Southern College in Statesboro, Georgia, with Carl Sagan teaching us basic computer language, of all things, and not astronomy. He was teaching a little bit of chemistry and a little bit of computer language. So that really was exciting for me. Not to mention the Australian 14 to 16-year-old women's soccer team was also on campus at the time. And that was something new for me as well. I hadn't seen any girls, and they certainly weren't interested in me because I was a chubby little brainiac. But that was a great year. And I finished high school, with top honors and all that stuff. But we had no money, so I went into the military, like my dad and my stepfather and my mother and my grandfather and everybody else in my family. And I took these tests and qualified for the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. So there's a lot of academics, a lot of nucleosynthesis, a lot of nuclear engineering, et cetera. And I did my enlistment with Navy subs and learned all about nuclear power. And when I got out, I really wanted to get involved in a scientific kind of thing. But this whole time from high school on, I had these telescopes my mom would buy from the Sears Roebuck catalog. That's right, Kevin. We had no internet in those days. If you wanted something, you went and got a catalog, or they mailed it to you, and you picked it and you circled it and you put it in an envelope and sent it back with your check. And that's how you got a telescope. So I remember clearly when I was 8 years old, my first cardboard tubed 4-inch reflector from Sears. The first thing I did with this telescope was screw on the solar filter to the eyepiece and went and looked at the sun, and until it exploded. And the eyepiece filter broke within 15 minutes of me looking at the sun. And I was like, man, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was fascinated by how I could look at this star up close and see things, even though I was risking my eyesight, obviously. But I don't think I ever used that telescope for nighttime. It's just the sun has always fascinated me. And I can go on and on, but I know this is a 1-hour program, but there's nothing more important to our existence in this universe than this star that's right next door. And, for decades, really centuries, it was basically ignored by astronomers because it's too bright to look at, or it was dangerous, or whatever. But, in the last half century, it's really come to a point where a consumer can get a telescope that's totally safe to see these things and study these things. And like I say, why stare at something that's, a million light years away when you got one 8 light minutes away? So that's the thing about the sun. And I went through a few careers, metalhead rocker, copier repairman, pet store employee, about a million other things. And I finally ended up in air traffic control. And that allowed me to make enough bank to actually do something to enjoy this hobby of solar astronomy. And around this same time in 2006 or so, my friend Charlie Bates, who was a good friend of mine, a fellow veteran, killed himself because of the demons that we all struggle with. His wife had died from cancer a year earlier. He'd started the self-destructive ways and ended up taking his life. And I thought, man, that is such a weird thing. It's just, when you're trying to understand why someone would do that to themselves. And around the same time, my own sister, who was 2 years older than me, killed herself as well. So it was one of those life-changing sort of things. And all this stuff happened at around the same time. And I decided, I am doing very well. Uh, I've been very fortunate in my life. And all of this could be traced back to a couple of adults when I was in early high school, taking the time to show me something, to see that I was alive, to recognize that I had value of some kind, and to teach me what they loved. And that's where it all came from, man. So around 2008, I decided I'm not going to mess around anymore. I'm going to buy this equipment. I'm going to create the greatest outreach program that's ever been known. And I'm going to take it everywhere on earth I can possibly take it. And my wife totally agreed. We started this nonprofit 501c3, the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project, named in memoriam to my friend Charlie Bates, who was not an astronomer. He was just a really good guy who I watched go from the top of the world to the bottom and then death. And I didn't want that to happen to other people. I knew that the cure for this kind of depression was giving people a chance and recognizing that they are of value. And that's what I wanted to do. The thing I loved the most was solar astronomy and physics and math. And that's what I had to offer. So that's what I started doing, man. And yeah, I didn't get any grants from anybody. I didn't get any sponsors. I didn't do any of that. I just took my own money, purchased the state of the art equipment at the time, and started doing it. So, there was no excuses. There was no somebody else needs to pay for it. It's me. Let's go do this. And, the rest is history, Kevin. So that's kind of how I got started in astronomy and how the Charlie Bates program came to be. And, you've been with me as good friends for most of that journey. So you already know all this, and I appreciate you letting me get on my soapbox.
Oh yeah. No, that comes up a lot. As someone who has their own outreach program, is a lot of people kind of look at it and say, "Well, how do I get started?" And they're kind of expecting to be at your level or my level, and they see you have all this equipment and sponsors and blah blah blah. It's like, how do I get to this point? And
Yeah.
you have to kind of show people that takes a lot of work to build a program up to that level. So not saying you can't do that, but if so, anybody who's watching, if you want to start an outreach program, it's not hard, but it does require you personally to make that effort to start going out to your local Starbucks or a library, or make an effort on start doing programs out there, because if you want eventually to grow it and sponsored and stuff like that by companies like Skywatcher and such, they're going to want to look at your portfolio and ask you,
right. And we
what are you
both
doing?
get requests, all the time from people, and they're good meaning, and they have the right motivation, but they always say, "Can I get a solar astronomy setup from you?" I get them at least 5 or 6 times a week. Can you send us a free telescope? Can you send us a computer and a camera? And so many, in fact, that I don't respond to any of them and haven't in years, and I'm sure that it's hard for you guys to do that as well. What I do, and if anybody's interested in how you become a sponsor in this program, I look for people on Facebook that are actually doing solar astronomy outreach. And when I find those people and I look at their pages for a while and see what they're doing, I contact them and ask them if I can help, and I hate to be that way, but there's so many requests coming from so many shysters. And I learned that the hard way. There were no sponsors of the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project for the first 4 years. It was me, and we have a thing where we never charge any fees for anything. I'm not interested in making any money. There's no salaries involved, none of that. But there were also no sponsors for the first 4 years. And I think my key to success in that area, in finally getting some big name sponsors, was that they saw I was doing it myself without asking them for anything. And they wanted me to be associated with their product because it had grown so big on its own. These vendors at NEAF and all these other shows, they get a constant stream of people that come up and have never done outreach before, have never done anything, never been associated with them, never donated to their program, nothing. But they think that they should give them a free telescope and a free mount right there because they're going to do some outreach. And that's great. And I encourage everyone to do that. But you're going to get a lot further by having an established thing you're already doing and say, here's what I'm doing now. Can you help us in some way to improve our program? That's the way to get into it. And do you have to have a nonprofit? No. I formed the nonprofit for tax reasons for myself because I was investing $75,000 a year, about half my retirement, into this program. And I wanted to have the tax benefit of not having to pay taxes on that. So that's why the nonprofit was formed. And since then, in order to stay a nonprofit, you have to have a third of your money raised from someone besides yourself. So that's why we do these fundraisers once a year on Facebook. And I can certainly use the money, but forming your own nonprofit is not necessary. It is a big advantage if you get large, because a lot of people that donate want to be able to write it off on their own taxes. And forming a nonprofit, we've been through this with Kevin and several other people. It's good. It's right for some people. It's not right for other people. But it's just a matter of contacting a professional and going through your state and federal Internal Revenue Service, and it's no big deal. If your motives are sincere, that's not a problem, and you can become your own nonprofit 501c3. Just about every astronomy club in the U.S. is a nonprofit. So,
Nice. Yeah.
I know I'm droning on and on it. You're going to have to get one of those canes where they pull you off stage and play the music. You've talked too much. Get out of here, Beyonce. You've said too much. So
the last 2 weeks we've been talking about solar filters on our webcast. I know I've talked to you about this several times, but with that, we've also gotten a lot of people asking, okay, I'm interested in the sun, especially because we are starting to approach another solar maximum in a couple of years.
yeah.
But the big question I guess a lot of people have is, what should I look at? And you've played, like myself, we've played with pretty much every solar scope on the face of the earth at this point. But what do you recommend someone who really wants to get serious about solar, probably starting to get into, maybe they've looked at a white light filter, they have one, but now they want to get serious about it. What do you generally recommend for someone like that?
I recommend they look at this.
This beautiful black line.
In a nutshell, this is the hydrogen alpha absorption line in the sun's visible light spectrum. And inside that line is an emission line called the hydrogen alpha emission line. And that's where it's at, man, in consumer solar. One thing I like about Skywatcher USA and my other sponsors, Astronomy, they all realize that promoting everyone's product like you do in your webcast is good for everyone's product. It's good for you. It's good for them. It's good for everyone. There's such a small niche of people that want to do this hobby right now that all of you working together, promoting each other's stuff is the way to go, man. It's not going to hurt if Kevin Lagore talks about Daystar filters on his program, or Lunt filters, or Coronados, or whatever, or even Skywatchers stuff. It's good for everybody. So I really appreciate that, and I do the same thing in my nonprofit. But to get into solar astronomy, I would suggest, getting a pair of solar glasses and looking at the sun and seeing how awesome it is. And then if you already have a telescope, add your full aperture solar filter to it, and that'll get your appetite wet. And then I suggest taking out your wallet and just emptying it on the counter at the Skywatcher booth, and just take whatever Kevin says. That's my advice. And no, really, there's no better visual presentation of the sun and hydrogen alpha than you will see through a Coronado tilt-tuned telescope. And that's just the bottom line. There's no better imaging of the full disk sun than you'll see through a Lunt solar telescope that's pressure tuned. And there's no better close-up, high focal length view of the sun through a camera than you'll see through a Daystar Quark, or their other more expensive filters. So it's 3 different products aimed at 3 different uses, and really promoting all of them at the same time promotes everyone, and that's the way to go, in my opinion. So thanks for doing that, Skywatcher.
I mean, if you ever go to an event, a lot of you never have one setup that's, it's never all Skywatcher. It's usually a
Right.
Skywatcher
Right.
mount with maybe an Explore Scientific telescope on it, with a ZWO camera on it, with whoever's filters, and it's always this hodgepodge collection of gear. And it's there's a lot of stuff we don't make. We probably won't make. We don't make cameras or motor focusers or all
Right.
that, but there's plenty of other great people out there who do. So, why not? I'd rather you
Well,
be out there with a telescope than
yeah,
sitting
me too.
inside watching the news over and over and over again. So,
Yeah, there's no point in competing with other vendors in this program because everyone's so small. But I have my friend that runs our UK affiliate, Mark Townley, has a Luntinado quark, which is some kind of monstrosity that's got a Coronado 2 with some lun on the end of it, and it's got some quarks on the other end of it, and it doesn't matter, man. I mean, they're all great. I am sponsored by Coronado, and like I say, if your interests are in visual full disk observing, that's the way to go, man. You can't beat it with any other product. And if your interests are strictly imaging, then you're going to need to go with some of the other vendors. But these companies all work together, and it's a real pleasure. I'll tell you, Corey Lee with Celestron is one of the greatest guys I've ever met, and I'm really, really proud to be associated with him. That guy has his head screwed on right, and I appreciate him. I'm trying to get Jeff Simon out there to come up to his level, man. But he's rough around the edges, man. I mean, we got to work on him a little bit. But no, I'm kidding. Jeff's awesome with Skywatcher, and Victor Anacito over at Mead, and Rainbow Symphony. I mean, when I said solar glasses, Rainbow Symphony is the world's largest solar eclipse glasses maker, and they make all kind of diffraction gratings and prisms and all kind of cool things for you to use. So you don't have to spend $5,000 on a setup. You can spend 28 cents on a pair of diffraction gratings and get endless hours of wonder and amazement if you really understand what you're looking at. So where do you start? Anywhere. Almost everybody starts with a Coronado PST, and they move up from there. That's the most common intro scope to solar astronomy. And I started with one. Kevin started with one. Everybody starts with one.
Still have one. I think you
The
have
point
one
is
too.
to learn it. Yeah, I still have one also. To learn it correctly and not just make it up, but to really truly understand what you're looking at when you see these things in the chromosphere. Astronomy clubs in the U.S. have a tendency just to kind of glance over the info and then start promoting it to the public. It's really important that you know what you're talking about when you promote this, and don't just make up some BS because you don't feel like learning it. So if you're going to start out in solar astronomy and you're going to share it with people, I strongly recommend, going to the solarchatforum.com that we run and getting the real information and learning it. And Kevin and I have had many conversations about what's going on here, what's going on there. And he's learned from my experience. I've learned from his experience, and it's just made both of our programs a lot better.
I find that solar astronomy, it's not even the fact that solar astronomy, like, it's not even the fact that we're doing solar astronomy. There's really nothing to do with it. But I find that is one of the best outlets for outreach, because I've gone to air shows, science festivals, whatever, but because it takes place during the day, if you're into outreach, that's like the fundamental tool, is to be able to do daytime astronomy, because it's, as someone who does nighttime outreach as well, it's way easier to go, hey, there's an art festival this weekend, I'm going to get a booth and going to go out there and do our thing. And you just went through 2,000-3,000 people, because that's where people are at. It's way easier to do that than to drag people out to a dark sky site. Yeah, like this one.
This is Greg People, who was my mentor and started me out. Greg People is still a big name. He was a huge name in solar astronomy outreach in the early 2000s at NEAF and around the world. And this is he and I at an event that Steele Hill invited us to. Steele was with NASA. And this is the Space Shuttle Discovery and the Space Shuttle Enterprise being dedicated at the Smithsonian to sit in the Smithsonian with each other. And look at how many people came out for this. We were the only extra add-on there, and we had 6,000 people come through that day. And you will never get this participation at night. This event would never have been held at night. And we had a bunch of scopes set up, and it's really tailor made for science outreach because people come out in the daytime that would normally never show up at night for anything, and they get exposed to a little bit of astronomy, and they want to do it, man. So everything you said is absolutely correct. It's tailor made for daytime
Yeah, so
science
if
outreach.
you're into outreach, or you're looking to maybe start your own program, solar astronomy is much easier. I found that solar astronomy is a really good way to segue people into my nighttime events, but it's way easier to get, like, I don't do tons of events. I do about 30 events a year, but I call them high impact events, which is just where there's tons of people at. So for me, like the Tucson Festival of Books, it takes place at the University of Arizona. We get 110,000 people in 2 days. Um,
Yeah.
we just set up out there, and let people come through and check stuff out. And the cool thing about, and this is one thing that Stephen will appreciate, but we're nighttime, and no one's bashing nighttime stuff right now, but solar astronomy is in a very unique position because the fact that you're able to use multiple filters like white light, hydrogen, calcium, you're not only teaching people how to observe the sun and our nearest star and its advantages, but you're starting to teach them about chemistry,
Spectroscopy.
and spectroscopy as well. So you're able to hit on multiple levels of science, using those telescopes right then and there, and it blends all of that together really well.
Yeah.
You know,
The point here is to get the general public and people who have never been exposed to science interested in science. And science is from a Latin word, scientia, which means knowledge. And you can look around right now and see how stupid our general community is compared to 50 years ago when we were landing people on the moon. And there's never been a time where it's more important to get more people interested in reason, science, and knowledge than there is now. And solar astronomy is a great vehicle by which to do that. And I don't care if somebody looks at my scope and doesn't want to be a solar astronomer. They want to be a chemist, or they want to be a stellar spectroscopist, or they want to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. But getting people involved in science, the one-on-one you have with them at the telescope, and really, I can't stress enough, just recognizing that somebody's alive and worth something goes a long way to making someone's life different when they're young. I live in a really messed up city with a lot of racism and a lot of problems that we deal with. And I can guarantee you that if you spend a few minutes with somebody that you would normally never even talk to, just, sincerely say, hey, man, this is what I do. This is what I love. Why don't you come over here and hang out with me and do it? You'll change that person's life. And that is a fact. And it doesn't matter if you're doing outreach with a guitar, you're teaching somebody to read, you're showing them science, whatever. Just the acknowledgement that you're a human being and I see you and I value you is got exponential returns in people's lives. And I know that, and I guarantee you that will happen if those of you listening go out and do something. So whatever you love, whatever you're good at, don't keep it a secret, man. Share it with somebody else.
that's a big fun. I've found at my outreach events, especially in today's era where everyone's got an opinion, whether it's right or wrong, or they've got a political view or whatever it is.
The Google doctorate.
Yeah, it's so easy to get into an argument nowadays with everything. But what I find with astronomy, what's really interesting at least, is a lot of that fades away very quickly because it almost digs into a person's fundamental interest of where we fit in the universe, and everyone has that, whether it's 5 seconds of interest or a lifetime of interest. Astronomy
I call it
has
clearing the fog, Kevin. I'm clearing the fog, man, because everybody's got all these layers of social media walls between themselves and others now, and everybody's isolated with the virus. Everybody's scared of everybody else. It's always those people are bad or whatever, but we are those people to half the country. I mean, it's just stupid. So I call it clearing away the fog. All you need is a friendly demeanor, and it's like, hey man, this is what I'm into. Come check it out. And it works. It works magic. It's amazing how much more value it is now with this isolationist approach we have in our society than it used to be. Because, it was pretty common for people to be very friendly here in Atlanta when they were walking around. You'd say hello. Now nobody even looks at you because everybody's scared of getting sick. Everybody's scared that you might shoot them or something. So it's even of more value now to clear the fog in between you and just recognize the fact that you're both in it together. We got 99% of things in common, 1% of things we don't agree on. Let's just worry about the things we have in common. And this really brings it out. It's really an icebreaker for people.
Yeah, and that's where I think outreach, particularly for me, astronomy, has it has that ice breaking effect, where a
Absolutely.
lot of those layers drop away and you forget about a lot of that stuff. Especially, and this is what I, in a way, like about the nighttime stuff as well, is you all look the same in the dark,
Right,
so no one
right.
cares. So,
Right.
but it's
Well,
astronomy.
in narrowband solar astronomy, everyone looks the same too, Kevin. Everyone's the same color.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where I find that you might be going out to this event thinking I'm just going to show people the moon, but there's a big underlying thing that you're going to bring to people that you might not be aware of, or you become jaded to, especially when you do it all the time. But you never know what you going out and setting up a telescope is going to do for that particular individual. They might be having a really crappy time at life, and you just
Yeah.
introduce them to something that's like, wow, this is really cool.
I had a guy come up at NEAF, and that's all very true, Kevin. You never know what somebody else is going through. And we've got so much nonsense now in our society that it's difficult to make personal contact with people. So I redouble my efforts to do it. But I had a guy come up at me a few years ago, Ray Lalonde, who came up and he had a tear in his eye almost. And he came up and he said, "I'm so happy to meet you, Mr. Ramsden." And of course, this guy's, well, and he told me, my wife's been terminally ill for the last 2 years. And I got involved in solar astronomy because of your website. And I follow what you do. And I went out and used my solar telescope. And it was the only respite I had from this horrible nightmare of my poor wife. And, he credited me with saving his life during this depressing period where his wife was ill. And I thought, man, you probably had no idea that statement to me totally wiped out all kind of bad thoughts I was having that day and frustrations I was having in my life. So it's a back and forth. It's a back and forth thing. And I've battled with bouts of depression of my own from being in the military and just losing my dad at an early age, those kind of things. I got all my own problems too, just like Kevin does, just like Jeff Simon. Everybody has their own problems, and there's no better way to better your outlook on life than through freely giving to others. Altruism is the number one cure for any depression you're suffering, in my opinion. So, the benefits, and I could talk about this all day long, man, but I look at this as not really astronomy. I don't even consider myself an astronomer, although I probably have more time at the H Alpha eyepiece than anybody alive. Um, it's all been in the pursuit of bettering the community that I live in. Because if I help other people get involved in something that makes them more intelligent, able to use reason, then it benefits all of us and our community gets better. So,
That's actually a good segue because since the eclipse, you've kind of stepped back in a way, from doing your typical solar outreach. Charlie Bates still exists, and you still do stuff, but your local efforts have evolved into kind of a newer program called Sunlit Earth. Can you tell people what that's all about? Because
yeah,
that elaborates further.
it's the same. It's the same thing to me. And when I announced all this, it was kind of a wave went through the community where, oh, he's quitting. He's no longer doing any. That wasn't the case at all. Sunlit Earth is an affiliate in the United States of this study of the sun. I mean, this picture on my laptop or on my iMac here is a barn owl, and when you look at something beautiful in nature like this, you're seeing the sun. You're seeing a reflection of different wavelengths of light. I mean, these feathers are diffracting, refracting, reflecting, and absorbing all the various wavelengths of light from the sun, and it's presenting an image into your into your optical sensors that we've evolved in our skulls here, our light sensitive organs that have evolved over millions of years to read the light from our star because we evolved around this star. So it was advantageous for us back in the day in order to not be eaten to be able to decipher the wavelengths of light coming from the core of that star 93 million miles away, and giving us a readout of what's around us in the environment. So if you wanted to stay alive, you had to develop photoreceptive cells that could translate that information into usable knowledge. So that's why we got this big old brain, and I got a huge one, as you can see. This is all a product of evolution based solely on the fact that we evolved and live around this star that emits this particular spectrum. So I thought, why not study sunlight in the terrestrial environment? It's the same thing, and it's so much more beautiful, and it'll reach a whole new crowd of people because there's already millions of birders in the United States. There's millions of wildlife photographers. There's millions of people that just love nature and love hiking. And everything you've ever seen that's beautiful or ugly or anything outside is a direct reflection of these wavelengths that we're studying through these telescopes. So let's do this for a while. And the solar eclipse was a big event for me, but it was a trying time for all of us in the industry because of the rampant misinformation about the safety of solar telescopes and the safety of solar glasses and the Amazon scams and all the fake glasses. It was just a horrible display of unbridled guilt and stupidity on the part of many overseas manufacturers that flooded the market with unsafe equipment. And that left a really bad taste in my mouth. I saw a lot of these companies struggle to stay alive just simply because of a decision that Amazon made and decisions that these manufacturers made. So I decided, this is I've been doing it for 10 years. I said, I'm going to do something different now. And this is what I'm going to do. So we're still supporting all the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project affiliates across the U.S. and around the world in 28 countries. And I still do solar outreach events occasionally, not as much with the virus. But this Sunlit Earth allowed me a chance to take young people from my community and from other communities around the country into the woods, give them some binoculars. I take a little PST on a mountain, I set it up, and we start out by looking at the sun. I say, here's where the light comes from. And we take our binoculars and we go around in nature and talk about how those wavelengths are used. Like this tree is dark green because it wants to absorb a lot of the sun's light to stay warm. This leaf over here is turning brown because of the absence of chlorophyll. This animal's camouflage allows it to sit on this bark of this oak tree and not be seen by predators. This animal is totally manipulating sunlight in order to blend in with its surroundings where its food is, and that's how it survives. And there's just a million different ways to interpret what we're seeing in nature, and all of them tied directly to nucleosynthesis in the sun's core. And I can't tell you how fascinating that is to me. Every time I go, I learn something new from somebody on the hike, and I see something new that I never even realized. And it's just been an incredible eye-opening experience for me, and hopefully for the people on the hikes. And we, of course, trimmed all that back for COVID. But I have faith in our system. I have faith in science in our country. I have faith that we're going to do the right thing coming up here in the next few months, and that we're going to get a reliable virus vaccine, and that I will be the first in line to take that sucker. I'll take 2, please. But I think we're going to get over this horrible year we've had. Things are going to look better, and people are going to want to go out and celebrate life again. And I want to be ready with the program where they can do that. So that's what I'm doing through Sunlit Earth. But I still 100% am supporting the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project. So that's not going away anytime soon, as far as I know. In fact, we just added a new country to the program last week, Ecuador. And I may have been a little biased there, so I can have a good contact in Ecuador when I go birding next time. But we are still 100% involved in spreading science around the world. Sunlit Earth is just a different way to share sunlight. Speaking of, Kevin, I need you to post some photos of the local birds on my site here today. I'm tired of your excuses. You've taken a bunch in the past, and you put up some fantastic shots, man. And I'd like for you to continue doing that, because it's the same thing. It's spectroscopy, no matter how you look at it. Nighttime astronomy, daytime astronomy, wildlife, any way you look at it. These wavelengths of light generated by nuclear fusion are the reason we exist and the reason we see. That's something worth studying in my book.
Yeah, you have something in your a collection of equipment that I think is really cool that few have, but you actually have spectroscope. Um,
I do.
so, could you elaborate on that to those who, because we haven't even touched on that um, with the past two episodes, but that's kind of, to me, I need to get one at some point, but that's kind of the ultimate uh, thing that, it's kind of the key that ties it all together at that point.
Well, you are correct. And I like to say this in my events. I'm trying to pull up a photo of that sucker. Um, everything, every practical applied science everywhere is based on spectroscopy, medical science, everything. I mean, spectroscopy is where all the actual information comes from in astronomy. Spectroscopy is how people do pathology in medicine is made with gas chromatography. Urine samples, if you have to get a job interview, um, the way you determine the composition of something, if you don't know what it is by the use of spectroscopy. And a spectrograph is a device. Here's a picture of it. Let's see if I can share my screen real quick. It's pretty killer. This picture is kind of weird. It's got my DSLR hooked up to this thing. This is a Sheliak L High Res 3, which is a litho spectrograph. And I'm very fortunate in that I have a good friend named Ben Jenkins, who's a professor at the University of West Georgia, and he teaches this course. And he got his master's degree by doing a dissertation on this particular model of spectrograph. So I have 3 or 4 versions of this. I have some handheld ones. I have an outreach version, and I have this observatory quality version. And this thing is designed to connect to the back of a telescope, and it gives you the spectrum of anything you look at night. And I'll go ahead and play this. This is an actual. Let me turn the volume down. Hold on. This is an actual video of the display from inside the spectroscope. And what it does is it shows you absorption lines and emission lines and distribution and curves based on magnetic fields. And you can tell everything about anything by looking through this device. You can attach it to a C14 or something and look at a galaxy, and you can tell the speed the galaxy is rotating. You can tell the composition of the galaxy. You can tell its magnetic field strength. You can tell its distance by redshift. All of these things are done through spectroscopy. You can just use it by itself, like I do, to look at the sun. And this video is showing you all the different absorption lines in the sun's visible light spectrum. And every single one of these lines means something. That's the sodium doublet that just went by right there. And that's the D1 and D2 lines created by sodium, which Daystar makes a filter where you can look at the sun in that wavelength. We're coming up in the green area, so the magnesium triplet is coming up. And this is absorption lines made by magnesium atoms in the sun's chromosphere. But every single one of these lines tells a story of some electron movement in some atom in the sun. A lot of these lines are caused by iron atoms in the sun. A lot of them are caused by helium, hydrogen. There's the magnesium triplet there. These are all markers of what something's made of. Anywhere you see this, anywhere in the universe indicates the presence of magnesium. And that's how things are done in astronomy. So yes, the spectrograph from Sheliak, I'm not even sure if they're still made. I think they are, but there's competitive versions out there. I'm pretty sure Michael Hattie over at Starlight Express has a pretty kick-ass spectroscope that he's putting out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say kick-ass on the air. But Michael Hattie is kick-ass. And there's several available. Woodland Hills sells the little handheld Sheliaks that you just put up, and you can see the absorption lines just by looking through it, man. So that's something we've always done. When we started out in 2008, we started with solar imaging setups in the outreach event, and nobody was doing that at the time. There was no one else out there doing anything near that. We had cameras and IMAX in each wavelength where the student could come up to take their own videos and take their own pictures of the sun. We had this Sheliak spectrograph ready to use. Nobody was doing that. And then we had, 6 telescopes, 2 in each wavelength, so we could accommodate large groups. And that was just something that blew everybody away when I did it. But, I don't do anything small, as you've known from knowing me.
Go big or go home.
Big or go home. And I'm hoping that since it spread so much around the country and the world, that now that's become the standard. So I think it's been good for outreach. I think adding the spectroscope has been great for outreach. If you're going to do something, man, do it right, and hopefully that's rubbed off everywhere, and we're gone from the days of some dudes, homemade dangerous solar scope out there by himself on the field, to now it's not acceptable. You have to have, something that's safe, and you have to know what you're talking about. So if that's the only thing I've left for the rest of them, then that's great. So spectroscopy is important, Kevin. That was the basis of that whole conversation.
That's the key. So we're getting down to the last, 10, 15 minutes. I know there's some questions on there, so I want to bring this into the Q&A session. So if you guys have any questions for Stephen, now's the time to throw them in the chat so we can get them in there.
I'll throw in, if I don't know the answer to your question, I'm not going to make up anything, just so you know. I'm just going to say I don't know.
First question, is there a good scope that I could use both visually and for imaging for solar?
Yes. The Coronado 90 millimeter or any millimeter Coronado telescope is fantastic for visual use, and it's also not bad for imaging. It's just depends on what you're going to do. If you're going to do more visual, then I would go with a tilt-tuned Etalon. If you're going to do more imaging, I would probably go with the pressure-tuned Etalon. If you want to do close-up imaging, then I would go with the Quarks, the Daystar stuff. But yeah, most people start out with the Coronado PST, and I've seen world-class images from around the world taken through a PST that that rival the best images anyone's ever taken. So if I were starting out in solar astronomy and I wanted to get into it without breaking the bank, that would be the scope I would buy, the Coronado PST. And I'm pretty sure Lunt offers a small scope similar to it. I mean, most people don't know this outside of the field, but David Lunt, Andy's dad, designed the Coronado PST. It's the same family. Andy started out by working on putting them together, and Lunt evolved from that through a bunch of gyrations and a bunch of bad news stories we won't get into. But Lunt evolved from that whole relationship. So it's all very tight-knit group of people, and nobody's going to put their product over anyone else's. They're going to promote it for what they are so that everyone benefits. So if you want to just do visual mostly, you need to go with the Coronados. And if you want to do imaging mostly, you probably need to go with the Lunts. But either one of them will provide a fantastic view in either way that you're using them. Everyone started with the PST, so that's why I'm saying PST.
Kind of been the gateway for most people.
It's a gateway to emptying your wallet.
Yes. You start with a little 40, and then you end up with a double stack 90 or crazy.
Don't blow a bunch of money on it. Just buy the base model PST, one Etalon, take the eyepieces that come with it, and you're going to get blown away by it, man. I mean, you're going to love it. You don't need to buy a bunch of extra junk. You don't need a fancy eyepiece with solar astronomy because it's one wavelength. There's no need for a Nagler chromatic aberration correcting eyepiece. The crappier the eyepiece, the better, because you're just trying to focus one wavelength. In fact, my 7th generation great grandfather, Jesse Ramsden, developed the Ramsden eyepiece, which is a notorious pile of crap. But if you use that on solar astronomy, you're going to be super happy with it. It's the cheapest eyepiece design you can buy.
Nice.
Sorry, Grandpa Jesse. Sorry about that.
Let's see. Next question. Have you
Where's the Star Trek questions, man? I mean,
getting lit up by everybody on that. Have you heard of the spectroscopy set from Field Tested Systems?
I have.
So what do you think of it?
I think it's outstanding, man. I mean, it's a great way to get into spectroscopy for night use. Tom Field is a good friend of both of ours. We know him well. He's one of the best guys out there. He makes a little screw-on star analyzer that you put on the end of your eyepiece. Look through it, and you will see immediately the spectrum of that star spread out next to the star. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. And if you add a simple camera to that, any astronomy camera, and get it focused in there, you can use his RSpec software and it will analyze that spectrum for you. That is absolutely amazing, because this is stuff that you needed an observatory and a university full of scientists to do 25 years ago. Now you can screw this onto your nighttime eyepiece, put in RSpec software, and you can analyze the exact composition of a star 50,000 light years away, or a galaxy 10 million light years away, or the planet's atmosphere in our own solar system. It's an absolutely amazing device, the Star Analyzer and related accessories from field tested systems.
I've got some friends who've messed with that, and I think it was like an 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain, like a standard C8.
Yeah.
And they pointed it at 3C273, which is the nearest quasar to Earth, and they were looking at the frickin' redshift of this quasar.
That's how it's done, man.
2.5 billion light years away, and it's like, yeah, here it is.
Can you imagine if the people had that back in the 17th century? I mean, how far more advanced we'd be. But I should probably say this is not designed for solar use. The Star Analyzer from Field Tested Systems is strictly a nighttime deal. But I mean, it's the same stars, man. This one is just real close, and you need more protection. But it's the same exact science, spectroscopy, and that is a fantastic way to get into the actual technical side of nighttime astronomy.
Perfect.
So me likey is the answer.
Any books to get started with the journey into solar astronomy and spectroscopy?
Yes, I want to get this name right, but the Sun, the Earth, and the Near Earth System by, I want to get this right, so just a second. Okay, I hope you didn't see that I don't have any pants on. It is a Zoom meeting. I mean, come on. The Sun, the Earth, and the Near Earth System by Dr. John Eddy, E-D-D-Y. John Eddy. It's available as a PDF online that you can read. It's also available as a hard copy or a paperback book. That is the single greatest book I've ever read on the sun for the layman and solar astronomy. Still Hill gave me a copy of that book about 12 years ago, and that's the best book I've ever read on the subject, and I highly recommend it.
Perfect. Next question. What starter kit for spectroscopy do you recommend?
I recommend a diffraction grating from Rainbow Symphony. They sell glasses. They also sell gratings that will produce a spectrum. And if that's something that's not to your liking, a simple prism will do the job, man. Isaac Newton discovered this field using a piece of angled glass that produced a spectrum of light across a piece of paper. And he measured the temperatures of the different wavelengths of light. He discovered spectroscopy. His equipment was not sensitive enough to see absorption lines and emission lines, and that was done later on by some other guys. But a prism will show you the spectrum, a diffraction grating that you can get anywhere. They call them fireworks glasses. Okay, there you go. There's a prism.
This is a real diffraction grating.
Oh, that's a real diffraction grating, yeah. Any of those things, man. You can just take a CD-ROM if you have one still. I know that's old school. And just look through the CD-ROM and you'll see a spectrum. I mean, spectrums are everywhere around you. And when you get into this field, you'll start seeing them all over the place. A good beginner's deal, probably a quality prism off of Amazon would be a good way to start. And then for use in a telescope, I would probably say the Star Analyzer from Field Tested Systems is probably the #1 cheapest and most accurate way to get started in this for nighttime use. For daytime use, go get a Coronado PSD. Quit messing around, man. I mean, come on.
What was the name of that book again?
The Sun, the Earth, and the Near Earth System by John Eddy, E-D-D-Y. Let's see if I can get
I found it. Some people were asking about it in the chat, so I just wanted to bring it up.
It's an absolutely fascinating book written by one of the foremost solar astronomers of our day. He's deceased now. He was a friend with Steel Hill back in the day. But in my opinion, you will not find a book that's easier to understand and more comprehensive of the field than that.
There you go. So this is the book right here. So yeah, that's on Amazon.
Strongly recommend. And no, I don't get any royalties. I wish I did. I wish I'd written that book.
Let's see. Got a couple more minutes left. Important question. This comes from Jeff. Which actor is the best performer of Captain Kirk?
Come on, man. Let's get with the real question. What are you talking about? The best captain on Star Trek?
Yeah. The best Captain Kirk actor.
Well, there's only one Captain Kirk actor. That's William Shatner. But I think you might have meant the best captains. This answer may surprise some people. I think Star Trek Enterprise with the guy, what's his name? The guy that had the dog, Captain Archer. I think that's the best version of Star Trek of any of them. And I'll tell you why. Star Trek Enterprise was a prequel to the original series where Earth had just overcome its final world war. Stupidity was everywhere. We had herd stupidity is a term I like to use. We're never going to get herd immunity, but we definitely already have herd stupidity. And Star Trek Enterprise was the story of the first warp engine being built with the help from the Vulcans. And man, I can't wait till the Vulcans get around to coming and visiting us and rescuing us from what we've got now. So Scott Bakula playing Captain Archer would be my favorite Star Trek captain.
There you go, Jeff.
And anyone who disagrees can hit the road, Jack.
Let's see. Here's a good one. How many tribbles do you have in your telescopes?
I have one tribble right here. And all they do is eat and breed. So if you stick around for another half an hour, I'll have 20 or 30 tribbles. And, there you go. Excellent show on Star Trek. Deep Space Nine was the episode Trials and Tribulations, where they took the footage from the actual Tribble episode on the original series and redid it with the crew from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Fantastic show, man.
Awesome. Well, unless you guys have any more questions, I think we got them all. If there's more, now's the time to throw them in. But yeah, Stephen, thanks for taking the time out of your week and battling through the hurricane and what have you.
Kevin, you're a VIP in my book, dude. Anything you want, you got. You know that. And come join our Facebook group at Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project or Sunlit Earth. We have Facebook groups for both of those, and we'd love to see your viewers over there.
We should have all of Stephen's information, like his website, in the description, down in the video description there below. So if you're watching this live, it should be down there. If it's not, I'll double check, make sure it's there. Or if you're watching this later, because these are recorded, you can go down there and we should have all the information down there so you guys can check out Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project. And if you want to get involved with that, you can reach out to Stephen and hopefully help with that when the world returns to normal. Or you can take a look at, like I said, like Stephen was saying, the Facebook group for Sunlit Earth and check out all the cool stuff they're doing out over there.
Jeff Simon, check out these Star Trek burns, brother. That's the authentic deal right here, man. Captain Kirk.
Sorry. If you guys are wondering who Jeff Simon is, he's the director of Skywatcher. He's my boss who lets me do this. He'll be on the last episode of the year here. So if you want to ask him questions or why Skywatcher is the way it is or why we have crazy people on like this, you can ask him at the end of the year, at the last final episode of the year. So that's who Jeff is, who we're referring to. He's watching. I'm sure he's having a field day with all of this. But yeah, so that wraps up our hour. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Stephen, thank you very much. I said, if you guys want to check out Stephen's stuff, we'll put his information in the description if it's not already there. Or yeah, go check out Sunlit Earth on Facebook. If you don't like Facebook, well, I don't like it either, but that's how it is. So, but yeah, go out, observe the sun, share it with somebody, go look at the spectrum, expand your knowledge and share it with others and hopefully make the world a little bit better place, one person at a time. So, thanks all for watching. Thanks, Stephen, for taking the time. And we will catch you guys next week, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatcher USA YouTube channel. So thanks very much, guys. Take care and clear skies.